Hi everyone. Have you thought about what kinds of exercise may be the best for you? There are many different types of aerobic exercises, including leisure walking, to brisk walking, to slight jogging, to fast running, and then go on to cross exercises like cycling, swimming, etc. But how do you choose which is the best one for you? Remember, we're talking about exercise in this ongoing series in the context of metabolic health. In the previous webinars, we've talked about intermittent fasting, diet, and I have introduced the concept of insulin resistance in the first webinar. And in the second webinar, we talked about snacking and cravings and what you can do to overcome them using evidence-based approaches. Today, we are going to talk a little bit more in detail about exercise, and I'll try and show you why you should begin with walking first and not directly jump to other forms of aerobic exercises. Before we deep dive, I would like to thank each one of you for subscribing to my channel and for helping me spread the word about health and nutrition. If you haven't subscribed before, now would be a good time to do so. I'm Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta, and welcome to Health and Nutrition with Sabyasachi. Today, we are going to be talking about why walking may be better than running. Because running involves a lot more activity and a lot more sweat. Intuitively, we feel that running is perhaps better than walking, but we are going to try and understand why walking actually might be better for you to start off. Before going into all of these, let me introduce the concept of aerobic exercises to you. The word aerobic really means using enough oxygen. So these exercises, this group of exercises called aerobic exercises, elevate your heart rate beyond your basal levels, use large muscle groups, that is, both the upper and the lower limbs as well as your core muscles. They are rhythmic in nature and they can be sustained for extended periods of time. So that is, somebody can do these exercises for an hour or 2 hours or maybe even 3 hours, right, for marathon runners, right? So aerobic exercises are something that we are really going to talk about today. And also, they use oxygen and, optimize or improve your cardiovascular and cardiorespiratory health immensely. The increases, aerobic exercises increase oxygen flow to muscles, therefore improving muscle health. They enhance your overall stamina and endurance levels. And there is so much more to discuss, and let's get underway. When you talk about walking, it's a whole spectrum, and it's not either yes or no. It's a whole continuum, starting with just leisure walking or brisk walking or a light jog, or we could go into a little quicker running, or we could go into cycling, or we could even go into swimming. So which one is better for you, and are they the same is the question that we are really asking today. And there are subtle differences that you'll realize as we go along, and why you should start with walking is something that we are going to actually try and discuss based on evidence-based literature. So overall, to explain this concept, we need to understand energy balances which are happening inside the cells, and then we'll build on top of that, right? So cells build organs, and organs build human beings. Same way, there are powerhouses in the cell which are called mitochondria, which build energy and which help the cell to function, and therefore helps us to function. So we'll, sort of establish the building blocks and then create the whole story. So I thought I'll divide the session today into these headings. So we look at the energy powerhouse of the cell, which are called mitochondria, and how these mitochondria actually produce the energy needed, that is called ATP or adenosine triphosphate. Then we look at the biochemistry of walking, and you'll realize why walking in a fasted state is perhaps the best exercise that you can do. Then we'll talk about when you should start walking, especially if you're obese and overweight. When should you start walking? Should you do it right away, or should you wait for a little while? How much should you walk? How quickly should you walk? There are so many of these subtle aspects of walking that we will discuss, and I will introduce the concept of MVPA, that is moderate to vigorous physical activity. A lot of people say, oh, walking is not exercise, but MVPA, trust me, is the best form of exercise, and you will see why. We'll talk about, of course, the health benefits of doing regular MVPA, and I'll quickly introduce the concept of VO2 Max and how you can use it as a guide to improve your pace of walking, and then perhaps into slight jogging, and then into running, maybe in 6 to 8 months time if you do it consistently. I'm Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta. I am an ophthalmologist and predominantly a vitreoretinal surgeon. That is, I am an eye specialist, and I practice in Borivali East in Mumbai at Future Vision Eye Care. I did my clinical research training at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and the Bloomberg School of Public Health, and I have now more than 120 publications to my name, and I have assisted more than 150 publications in the top peer-reviewed journals through Sengupta's Research Academy, and you can look up that as well. I am the ex-associate editor of the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology and the IGO case reports, and I was enlisted in the top 2% list of scientists globally, not just in medicine but globally, by Stanford University in 2021 based on paper citations. Right, so hopefully I'll be able to give you a unique perspective on how literature is evolving on exercise and where we are going. A quick disclaimer is I am not an expert in nutrition, neither am I an expert on physical training, but my top-notch clinical research skills help me stay on top of evolving literature, and I'll hopefully give you a perspective on where we are and where we are going. A little bit about my own journey. Just a quick recap is, this is how I was in 2023 on your left. That is December 2023. That's about 7 or 8 months back. And, then I did something dramatic, and I have talked a lot about that in the previous webinar on health and nutrition. And you should definitely take a look at that if you haven't already. And so, I lost about 16 kilos in 3 months. That's 1 kilogram every week. And I was 87 kilos by March 2024. And then, the journey has evolved over a period of time, and within 6 months or within 25 weeks I lost 25 kilograms, and it's actually very much doable just with diet. And take a look at the previous webinar recording, and I'm going to concentrate a little bit about all my learnings during this phase in this series that we'll have more lectures. So please subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll be able to transfer all of that learning, and that can actually help you and your friends and family. That's another close-up of the phase pre and post, and you can see the humongous difference that has happened in about 2.5 to 3 months. This video in short actually brings together everything that I've learned. You need to have low carb and high protein diet, take some supplementation. These are some examples of the foods that I consume, and then persistent and regular exercise, committed efforts on a daily basis, if not daily, at least twice or thrice a week. As you can see, the times are improving, the distances are also improving. This is pretty much the template, and I've talked so much about this in the previous webinar, and we will keep talking about a lot of these aspects going forwards. So over a period of time, I started improving, and then I was to my 2.0 selves. I was energetic, and I think if I can do it, you can get there too. So let's all follow some of these templates and get some of the best results possible. So, getting back to today's session on, what we're trying to learn, let's first look at what are the energy powerhouses inside a cell. So we will deep dive into a human cell. So this is really how a human cell looks like. We have trillions and trillions of cells in the body. There are things coming out and going in. This really looks like a factory in motion, right? So it is pretty spectacular. So, when you take a slightly deep dive into some of the structures which are inside, remember, we are trying to look at mitochondria. The central pink thing is the nucleus and the nucleolus, which are, which the brains with which the cell works. There are many other structures inside the cell which we call organelles. These yellow ones are called ribosomes, which actually produce proteins. These blue, ones are endoplasmic reticulum, and the yellow one that you see here at the bottom, this is the mitochondria, and this is the topic of our interest today. And these are the powerhouses and the ones which actually produce energy for us, right? So this is a cut section, a mitochondrion which has been cut half, and this is a mitochondrion where the upper layer has been peeled out, and this is a mitochondria, and this is how it looks like, right? So there are two layers of the mitochondria. One is the outer layer and one is the inner layer, which is thrown into these folds called rugosities. And actually, if you look at mitochondria, they are not static structures, they are dynamic structures. They are in motion all the time, and so is the machinery inside each cell of our bodies, and they're constantly consuming substrate like glucose and fatty acids and producing ATP. So the number of mitochondria differ in different kind of cells. The cells which are very active, like neurons or muscle cells, will use this ATP and generate the electricity, the electric currents which help us move our hands and limbs by the neurons, or or muscle cells which contract and actually execute that order from the brain. So they have plenty and plenty of mitochondria, and there's a continuous recycling of mitochondria where old mitochondria are burnt out and new mitochondria are being produced. So this is all a very dynamic process, and there are some organs in the body which are relatively more docile, where you have fewer mitochondria, but every cell has mitochondria, and these are the energy building blocks inside cells. You'll quickly understand why we are talking about mitochondria. Remember, we are talking about why walking is better than running. So this is what is exactly happening inside mitochondria. So this pink thing is the glucose or the fatty acid. It's being taken up by the mitochondria, and then as you see it, that pink thing is going down through all these regions, and these processes are working, and then they're trying to produce energy. If you take a closer look, you'll understand all this is happening in the inner layer or the rugosities of these mitochondria, and they're actually digesting this substrate that is either glucose or fatty acids, and what you're getting at the other end is some waste material as well as. So what is being produced at the other end are these green dots that you see. These are called adenosine triphosphate, and these are the energy rich molecules which are utilized by the cell to actually conduct their function, right? So a little bit of waste product is left behind. The green has become, the pink has become green, and some of it is going to get excreted and some of it is going to get reutilized, right? So this is essentially how these building blocks actually produce ATP. So where is ATP produced? Inside the cells. It's the mitochondrion. Drugs like metformin, which is used for diabetes, actually work at the mitochondrial level. Exercise actually increases the number of mitochondria in your muscles, and therefore the need for ATP is increasing, and therefore more substrate is utilized, and therefore more glucose is getting utilized. Your blood glucose is getting controlled well, and therefore you perhaps going to need fewer diabetic medications, or perhaps even reverse your diabetes if you do enough exercises that we'll talk about later on, right? So therefore knowing about mitochondria and their functions of ATP production is really important. So once we've taken a look at where the mitochondria is located and how it actually produces ATP, let's talk about the biochemistry. That is, what is actually going in and what is coming out. That is explained, so we're talking about the biochemistry, the same thing that I talked about. So that can be explained using something called the Krebs cycle, and we've talked about this a little bit, touched upon it a little bit in the previous webinar. But the Krebs cycle is, so this is the mitochondrion. This is the, this entire double-layered box is the mitochondrion, the outer and the inner layers. What is entering into this is acetyl-CoA. You don't need to worry about the entire cycle. Just remember that the substrate which actually enters the mitochondria is not the glucose or the fatty acid, but this acetyl-CoA. So glucose enters the cell, and then it gets converted to acetyl-CoA using a process called glycolysis, right? So glucose will undergo glycolysis, fatty acids will undergo beta oxidation, and these will all produce acetyl-CoA. And in the total absence of glucose and fatty acids, sometimes even amino acids or your proteins will be broken down to produce the required ATP, right? So so why do cells prefer glucose over fatty acids? Remember that burning one molecule of glucose will give you about 30 to 32 molecules of ATP, whereas burning one molecule of fatty acid will give you about 106 molecules of ATP. That's almost 4 times higher, right? Nearly 3.5 to 4 times higher. So why do cells prefer glucose despite having so much of fats? The simple answer is that glucose metabolism is quicker, right? And it can happen even in the absence of oxygen. Of course, it does better with oxygen, but it can also happen without oxygen. Nobody really wants to wait today. Nature has also evolved in that manner where you don't want to wait. Muscles don't want to wait. They want energy and they want it now, right? So, that's why cells prefer glucose. Remember that the big daddy, which is sitting above all of this, is insulin. Insulin is the one which actually promotes glucose utilization and suppresses fat utilization, or insulin causes fat storage, and insulin resistance will cause more fat storage and your belly will protrude out. And we'll do some more sessions going forwards on insulin resistance and why you start getting fat when you have more insulin. But overall, remember that glucose metabolism yields fewer amount of ATP, but still we prefer that. Right, an example is if you're sitting on a pyre or you're sitting on a big fire. If you throw glucose into it, it's going to quickly burn out and it's going to char and everything's going to get extinguished within a minute. But if you add ghee, or if you add some oil to it, which is fatty acids, and then you fan it up a little bit, the fire is going to grow further and more and stay for much longer periods of time. And that's what we're talking about. So remember, fatty acids require that oxygen. They should have enough oxygen to be utilized as a source of fuel. That is first and foremost, and it's far slower. So fatty acids can't be burned quickly. So you will get more energy, but in the ideal conditions. So when will the body not prefer glucose? When will we want the body to burn fats, right? So when you don't have enough glucose, the insulin levels go down, and that is when fatty, all cells in the body will turn to fatty acids for their energy requirements. So as you can imagine, having low glucose levels happen only when you are in a fasted state, right? So if you are fasting for about 10 or 12 or 13 hours, that's when you will have low glucose, and that's when your fatty acids will start mobilizing. Don't worry, your glucose will not fall to levels where you will collapse and fall down. That doesn't happen due to many auto-regulation or auto-regulatory mechanisms in the body. But then fatty acids will start getting utilized. So, and if you are walking at paces that we will discuss a little later, or that is brisk walking in a fasted state, and that is when maximum fatty acids will be utilized. So the main way to reduce fatty acids in your body, that is to burn belly fat and to reduce triglycerides levels, are brisk walking in a fasted state. This is the biochemistry behind all of this. Like I said, glucose metabolism will be suppressed only during the fasting state, and we will use fatty acids for your ATP requirements. And so when this happens through the entire body, that is when you're walking in a fasted state, almost all muscles are going to be hungry because you are doing that activity, and they are going to utilize fatty acids, right? So fatty acids from the belly will be mobilized because there is low insulin levels now, and they will be so free fatty acids will come into circulation, and your muscles will just engulf them, and then you will see the benefits in 3 or 4 months. The next question I get is, how much do you walk and how quickly? A lot of people, like I said, say walking is not exercise, right? So somebody is actually walking back carrying groceries. Is that enough exercise? Not at all. Somebody is doing light jogging. Is that exercise? Perhaps. Somebody is doing very gentle cycling. Is that enough exercise? Perhaps not. So, so what is and what isn't is what we're going to talk about now. So I'm going to introduce a concept of MVPA. Right. So MVPA is moderate to vigorous physical activity. Now, what does moderate activity mean? Is activities that cause slight but noticeable increase in your breathing and heart rate. Right. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. But essentially, you can carry on a conversation with somebody while breathing heavier than normal. That's pretty much what is moderate activity. This is all subjective, so let's take a look at more objective measures of how you know you will be in moderate activity a little later. What is vigorous activity is, you're bumping it a little higher. So activities that cause significant increase in breathing and heart rate, significant increase, and basically conversation becomes more difficult, challenging, or almost impossible, due to the intensity that you're doing your activity in. So this is vigorous activity, right? So a combination of moderate and vigorous activity is MVPA. Now, how do you know that you're doing enough MVPA? And, what about me? I know what is MVPA, but am I doing it right? So what you can do is you can use your heart rate to understand whether you're in MVPA or not. So there are 5 different zones of heart rate. So it's all based on your HR max, or maximum heart rate. And for most individuals, even if you do a lot of activity, it's about 150 upper limit. Beyond that you're going to experience a lot of discomfort. So if HR max is 150, zone 1 is about 50% of that. That's about 75. So if your heart rate is about 75 or thereabouts, you are in zone 1. That's like warm up. Zone 2 is about 60 to 70% of your HR max. That's about 90 to 100 per minute. That is the target range for aerobic and base fitness work. And here, 85% of the ATP that you require is coming from fats. So you really want to be in zone 2, right? So you want to have a tracker, and then you want to see where your heart rate is when you're doing that activity. Zone 3 is when your heart rate goes to about 80% of your HR max. So now you're talking in the range of about 120 beats per minute. That's like light jogging, and there about 65% of your ATP needs will come with fat burning still, right? So you want to remain in zone 2 or zone 3. So zone 2 is moderate activity, zone 3 is vigorous activity. Now zone 4 is going to anaerobic activity, where there's not going to be enough oxygen for most individual unless you're a well-trained athlete, right? So zone 4 is your heart rate is about 90% of where you want to be. So it's about 135 or 140 per minute, and that's when you are going to not have enough oxygen, and it's going to go into acidosis, and you're not going to feel too well. So we don't want to do or overdo it. And zone 5, of course, is 100%. So your heart rate is about 145, 150, and that's generally good for sprints or tempo runs that we call, and not all the time. So how do you know you're in MVPA? Even to break it down further, we want to remain in zone 2, remember? So because 85% of your ATP will come from fat burning. I showed you the Krebs cycle and what is happening inside your mitochondria. So now you get a context of why I was teaching you about mitochondria, right? Remember, this is for a well-fed state. But in a fasted state, when you don't have glucose, almost 100% of your ATP is coming from fat burning, right? So that's really the crux of it. Fasted walking or brisk walking, and if HR max is about 150 beats per minute, then your target needs, like I said, to be between 90 and 100 beats per minute. To break it down even further, what you need to do is walk 1 kilometer in about 10 minutes. For an average sized Indian individual, about say height of 5 feet 5, 5 feet 7, you need to walk 1 kilometer in 10 minutes, no more. Right? So in the beginning, you may do it in 11 or 12 minutes, and you will see that actually walking 1 kilometer in 10 minutes is pretty brisk walking for most of us, right? To maintain that pace for 2 or 3 kilometers is quite brisk walking. So if you're doing 1 kilometer in 10 minutes, you are in MVPA. How you know that, how will you know that is by wearing a tracker like this. So I wear a tracker. I'm going to show you a little close up. So I wear a tracker which is by Garmin company, but you are free to buy any trackers which will show you heart rates. But Garmin will show you many other parameters. Importantly, it will show you something called VO2 Max. Apple Watch shows you, Samsung Watch shows you, but Garmin is actually designed only predominantly for athletic and sports like activities. And though it is a smart watch, it is not as smart as the Apple Watch. But for your fitness levels, I think don't look any beyond Garmin. And it perhaps is slightly more expensive, but I think it's well worth the investment. So think about getting one of the cheaper Garmin brands in the beginning if you want, but at least buy a tracker which will show you your heart rate, real-time heart rate, as well as how quickly you're walking. That is, how many minutes are you taking per kilometer. Next question I keep getting asked is, when do I start? I'm too obese, I'm too overweight, should I walk? So think about starting walking or brisk walking or MVPA after losing at least 10% of your body weight, especially if you're quite obese and your basal metabolic rate or BMR is above 30 or 32. That means you're significantly overweight. And if you start doing 1 kilometer in 10 minutes, you're going to get injured, right? Because you're carrying a lot of extra load with you, right? So first and foremost, lose 10% of your body weight. How do you do that? Is by adhering to intermittent fasting and a ketogenic or a paleo diet. And we've talked a lot about it in the previous webinar, and you should actually take a look at that. And we are going to talk more about it in the forthcoming lectures, where I'll help you actually design your own meal and show you examples of what I do based on your insulin resistance levels, right? But remember that you should start after you start losing 10% of your body weight and not immediately. And how much MVPA should I be doing? A lot of research has been done on it, and this is I'll put a link of this in the description below. You can take a look at the WHO recommendations, and almost all major organizations recommend 150 minutes of MVPA per week, right? So if you have only 30 minutes time, you will do 30 minutes 5 days a week. If you have 40 minutes time, you will do 40 minutes at least 4 times a week. if you have 50 minutes time, I think it's an overkill. So perhaps you do thrice in a week, but remember, if you're doing 30 minutes, you're doing 3 kilometers. So it's good to do 3 kilometers every day for 5 days, or 40 minutes, that is 4 kilometers every day for 4 days. Maybe doing 5 kilometers in 50 minutes thrice a week. You are putting a lot of stress, at least in the beginning, right? So think about this, and this is how you plan. So how much walking is enough? First and foremost, you need to be in zone 2 of your heart rate. So monitor your heart rate, monitor how quickly you're walking. Do 1 kilometer in 10 minutes, and you need to do like 15 kilometers every week. That's pretty much your target. How many times a week is really up to you and your availability of time. So this is what we've learned so far. So we've started building up the building blocks, that is mitochondria. Then we looked at how it produces ATP, and then we've looked at substrate utilization and production of ATP, and why walking is perhaps better, especially in a fasted state. And then when you should start, and how quickly you should walk. Let's quickly look at some of the benefits of MVPA, and they're pretty obvious, right? So it improves your cardiovascular health tremendously. Your cardiorespiratory health improves, your circulation is improving, you're able to use more oxygen, your VO2 max is going better. Of course, it leads to better metabolic health. Your insulin resistance goes down because you are using up all that glucose, right? Your diabetes control also becomes better, like I said, because diabetes thrives when you don't exercise, right? But then when you exercise, you're utilizing all that substrate, right, at the mitochondrial level, right? So exercise increases, or walking, MVPA increases the number of mitochondria in your cells, right? Of course, it helps in weight control because of all of these reasons. If you have fertility issues, and especially if you're a bit obese, and women especially who have polycystic ovarian disease, as well as men, let's not discount male infertility here because of overweight and obesity. Instead of going for a lot of these expensive in vitro techniques, first look at how you can actually get into better physical shape, right? So your fertility will tremendously improve if you start exercising. Overall, your risk of cancer also significantly reduces. So a smoker who doesn't exercise versus a smoker who exercises, the smoker who doesn't exercise will have a far higher risk of lung cancer, right? A smoker who is also obese and who is also diabetic but doesn't exercise will have a lot more disease than all of these risk factors but exercise. So that is the tremendous boost that you get when you're exercising. Your risk of liver disease is going down. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is on the rise now, and we are going to hear a lot more about this, that somebody is dying of liver failure without having drunk a sip of alcohol. Right, and that is because insulin is like alcohol almost, and we've discussed this before. Right, so the effect on your mental health, the mood on a daily basis, is something that you have to experience. And trust me, once you experience that, it's such a high, and you are high through the day, without taking any intoxication. But then that's like your 2.0 self. You will never want to regress back, right? So make exercise a part of life, right? Effects of exercise on longevity are being studied gradually as our lifespans improve. But let's talk about health span, right? We want to be as healthy as possible for as long as possible, and we can have a whole lecture on longevity and exercise and insulin resistance, and I'm working on subsequent videos to talk to you about longevity and all of this from whatever research I have read. And there is so much more to it. As you can imagine, there are so many benefits of exercise. After the benefits, let's quickly take a look at VO2 max, what it is, how it is calculated, how it is measured, and how you can use it to bump up your exercise routines as you go ahead. So in the laboratory, this is how VO2 max is measured, right? So you wear a mask over your nose, and you have various electrodes connected to your body, and then you are asked to do the MVPA, and all of these parameters are recorded, and it is expressed, VO2 max is expressed as milliliters of oxygen consumed per kilogram body weight per minute. That means it really is telling you how efficiently your body is able to utilize the oxygen, and how much oxygen you can take in when you are actually exercising. So this is a quick representation of how you can use VO2 max, like I said, to bump up your exercises. So on the x-axis you have your VO2 max readings, right? So it starts anywhere between 35, 36 and can go as high as 80 as well, but I haven't put that much here. And on this curved axis you have your pace, that is minutes taken per kilometer covered, right? So here 10 to 11 minutes per kilometer, say that is a speed that you're going, or a pace, this is pace that you're going at. Then if you take 7 to 8 minutes per kilometer, you're going faster, right? Because you're taking lesser time. Then you will graduate on to doing it in a kilometer in about 6 to 7 minutes. That's you're going even faster. Then you might actually do a kilometer in 4 to 5 minutes. Like you're taking lesser and lesser time for the same kilometer. And once you are at an elite level, you could do a 1 kilometer in about 2 to 3 minutes, and over sustained periods of time. That's almost like Olympic level fitness, right? So let me quickly show you how these are related. So let's start from the bottom here. So remember, your VO2 max levels can be seen on your Garmin watch, and you need not go to a lab to do all your basic testing on an everyday basis, right? Because you need to monitor, is it getting better or not. So at basal levels you might see that your VO2 max is about 35 or 36, and at that level you will find doing 1 kilometer in 10 minutes quite stressful, right? But then if you persist, you could, in the beginning you could do it in 11 minutes, 12 minutes or whatever. But as your MVPA, that 150 minutes per week continues in about 4 to 5 weeks, that's in about a month, you will see that you will be able to do 10 kilometers 1 kilometer in 10 minutes pretty easily, and that your VO2 max is getting slightly better. When you get to about 35, 36, 37 levels, you will be doing it in about 9 minutes. When you get to about 40, VO2 max of 40, you will see that you will be doing 1 kilometer in about 8 minutes or so. That's like gentle jogging. And when it gets to about VO2 max gets to about 42 level, you will see that you are able to do a kilometer in about say 7 minutes or so. And when it gets better to about 45, you will see that you can do a whole kilometer in about 6 to 7 minutes, and sustainedly for at least 5 or 6 minutes, right? So you'll be doing 5 kilometers in about 30 minutes. That's that generally corresponds with VO2 max of 45. And then when your VO2 max goes to about 50, you will be not even 50, even 46 or 47, like I'm able to do 5 kilometers in about 27, 28 minutes. But then once it gets to 50, you will be able to do 5 kilometers in 25 minutes. That's like fast. That's like relatively rapid pace. And then when your VO2 max goes about more than 50, you will be able to do 5 kilometers in something like 19, 20 minutes. And then gradually, as you go higher and higher, you will be able to do faster and faster. That means you're running even faster now, and then you could perhaps even reach athletic levels and even elite marathon levels. So this is pretty much how you can use, remember that walking the same thing over and over again can actually tire you out, right? So also when you have a VO2 max of about 40, you will be in the top 50% of your age group. That's about between 40 and 50 years of age. If your VO2 max is about 45, you will be in the top 25% of your age group. If once your VO2 max is about 50, you are able to consume a lot more oxygen, right? You are able to breathe more relaxed. Your heart rate is not shooting up as much, and your heart rate, and heart can actually utilize enough oxygen. Body is able to nicely use oxygen and do more activity. You will be in the top 10% of your age group. And then, when your VO2 max reaches about 55 and above, you will be in the top 1% of your age group, right? So, just try and get your VO2 max improving gradually. With consistent efforts, your VO2 max will definitely improve. Also remember that having a static VO2 max is perhaps not the best idea, and that means your body is getting tolerant. So when there is too much of the same thing, in any biologic system, tolerance or resistance develops, right? So too much insulin will lead to insulin resistance. Too much antibiotics will lead to antibiotic resistance in microorganisms. Similarly, doing the same amount of, say doing 3 kilometers in 30 minutes over many months together, you're going to lose the effect of the metabolic effect of that, right? So you actually need to either go faster or go longer, right? So you need to actually very slowly and surely bump up your exercise levels, and you can actually use VO2 max as a guide as to where your body is actually ready to do these kind of activities. VO2 max is one of the best indicators of that. And so we've now looked at everything that we wanted to, with starting with the building blocks of energy, that is mitochondria, and how they make ATP, and why fasted walking is better than just walking, and why moderate to vigorous physical activity, or MVPA, and all of those advantages of MVPA. And then I've given you how you can actually bump up your MVPA, go from more moderate towards more vigorous, right, using your VO2 max, and that will keep you refreshed and looking forwards to keep on improving. So VO2 max is something that you should look forward to. So to quickly summarize or conclude everything that we have discussed today, let's take a last 1 minute to actually conclude everything, and the take-home messages, or the final thing that you will remember. First and foremost, walking first. No running, no weights, not too many more exercises. Walking first. When you're beginning your journey, start with walking, and not just leisure walking, right? Remember, fasted state walking is better than walking in a full stomach. So try and walk in a fasted state. Then 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week is what is recommended to begin with, and anywhere between 150 to 300 is okay. And you need to get more towards the 300 minutes, and also start getting your VO2 max better. So use VO2 max as a performance monitor, and try and bump it higher, and don't worry if it takes longer time, but then you should have at least 1 point increment every 6 to 8 weeks, right? So that's how it is going to slowly improve. So you will have about 5 or 6 point improvement in about 8 or 9 months. Is that pretty much of course for power? This will happen if you do consistent activities. Remember, walking is a superpower, like sleep. Walk is a superpower. We sleep every day, right? We exercise that, and hope you do as well. So you take about 7 to 8 hours of nap every day, and we'll talk a little bit more about sleep and metabolic control in subsequent sessions. But similarly, walking is a superpower which you can exercise for only 30 minutes in a day, every day for 5 days a week, and that's good enough, right? So you will get all the metabolic benefits if you do MVPA 150. I'm just reiterating that so that it actually sticks in your mind. All right, that brings us to the conclusion of the session today. I hope you have liked it. Please get in touch with me and send me an email or send me a WhatsApp. If you have any queries, please also put them down in the in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer some of the comments. And let's keep this discussion going. And lastly, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so that it motivates me and my team to create these resources for you. And also remember to please pass on the good word to all your friends and family who will actually perhaps benefit immensely with all of this information. Next week, I'm going to be helping you create your own personalized diet chart based on some parameters. Right, that's going to be happening next Wednesday. So stay tuned for it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for tuning into this session of Health and Nutrition with Sabyasachi. I hope you liked this one, and stay tuned for more. Let's exercise and utilize this superpower that we have, and let's do fasting right. Thank you so much.